Thank you. Welcome home.
Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning. I have to apologize. I'm back in the land of allergies, apparently. I was on the spiritual journey, and we got back Friday night. It was Friday night, right? Yeah. Well, that's part of what I want to talk to you about today, too, is that I think I'm eminently qualified to be here today to talk to you about rejoicing in newness. And then I'll use that as a little segue into giving you a little report of where I've been and kind of what I've been doing so that you can see that I'm up to here in newness in the last couple of weeks. I've just also returned before the spiritual journey. I was in Mexico for 10 days. So I have covered mostly new, 3,000 miles on the ground in buses in the last 2 weeks. Aside from the people that you just encounter in your travels, you know, the folks in the hotels and the train stations and the bus stations and whatever, and the taxi drivers and all of that, I think I've met about 75 new people that are in my life now, so that's newness, and getting to know them and them getting to know me. I've slept in 4 different beds over the last couple of weeks in different places, in Mexico and in Acoma and Canyon de Chelly. I gave a workshop in Ajijic, Mexico, in both Spanish and English. It was a new workshop that I had never done before. I learned 8 new songs there at the Science of Mind conference in Mexico in both Spanish and English. Learned a couple, they were mostly Karen Drucker chants, like the ones that you opened up with today and the one you sing during the offertory, Karen Drucker's work. I learned a couple of older ones that I already knew. I Release, Ricky Byers' song, I Release, and Daniel Nahmad's One Power. Learned those in Spanish and had to be reminded of them in English too, for that matter. And then I had the mixed blessing privilege, I'm not clear yet exactly what it was, of being asked to perform a solo at this event down there, singing the song that I had to learn brand new from scratch called Amazing Things, and doing it in duet in the chorus with John Waterhouse, the president of Science of Mind, or Centers for Spiritual Living International. So it was quite a couple of weeks for me. New. So I'm here, hopefully, like a whole new person. I might look like the same one you knew before, but I've changed a lot, I think, in this last couple of weeks' time from all the newness and the new experiences that I've had and how those have been integrated. And then to top it all off, if you thought you were capping off the month of rejoicing in newness, you know what happened yesterday? We got a new moon. So it's like all coming together here in newness today for sure. So we're rejoicing in all that newness. And I think that what the title of my talk is newness is nowness. That what we are taking in the now is the only place that we have an opportunity for newness to come in. And I noticed in your affirmation that you sneaked in there the real word for new, which is change. That I trust God in all change, or something like that was the affirmation, right? That new and change are almost synonyms, or certainly newness has to happen. Change is predicated upon newness, let's say that. That unless something new comes in, there isn't any change. So I want to start today, too, with a couple of premises and agreements that I hope we can all be on the same page about in the room here today, because of our principles and the concepts of Science of Mind. Now, we believe, and I hope you all will agree with this, because if not, I might as well throw the talk out, that our reality is what we create, that we create our own reality. That I create my reality, you create your reality, and the two are not identical to each other, because we are individualized expressions of spirit, and through that individualized expression, we each have our own different reality, and we've created that reality largely by thinking about or telling ourselves the story about what that reality is. So that thought process around our reality is how our mentality becomes our reality. So we're all on the same page so far? Then we also have this concept that if you can change your thinking, you can change your life. You know, we say, change your thinking, change your life, like it's a command. In reality, our thought process, if it's not changing, we're not changing, and our reality is not changing, and all those things that back up through the premises I just laid down get thrown into reverse. So if we have this ability to change our thinking, to change our lives, how do we change our thinking? What causes a change in thought process? Up to now, you know, at the age that I am, I've had all these thoughts for my nearly 7 decades that is all balancing one side of the teeter-totter, you know, so for something new to come in is not always that easy. Well, one of the thoughts that I had about today is that I wanted to share with you, and I think you've heard this before, is that Einstein is the one that we attribute the quote to having said that you cannot solve the problem at the same level of thinking that created it. So we have to have another level of thinking. Something new has to come in, and we have to be willing to embrace it and rejoice in it for it to truly be integrated into our physiology, into our thoughts, into our feelings, to ultimately manifest as an actual change in our lives that changes our reality, that changes who we are. So now that we have all of that kind of understanding and laid out in the front part of the talk here, the creative moment is now, and now is what is new. And I want to talk to us about how we experience newness, because like I've just had a lot of experience with newness in the last couple of weeks, and how physiologically we experience newness, where we let it in, how, and I want to offer up to you today, I hope by the time my talk is finished, some technique on how to access our thought process in a different fashion so that we're able to let more newness and let more change evolve in us. So the access to creation, and this is the creative process up here, right? This open at the top. Doug talked about in his reading about this higher conscious and lower conscious, and that the higher conscious is what's connected to God, and the lower conscious is what's more connected to what I call the 3D world. You've all heard me use that term before, right? All this material stuff, all this hardness. That whole creative process involves opening our mind. So Ernest teaches us that we have to be open at the top. Well, what I want to submit to you today is some ideas around how our mind really works and how the physiology of the brain works, based on more recent scientific understandings of it. And I think I've spoken to you here before about the concept of neuroplasticity. One time, a couple years ago, I think I spoke about this book by Sharon Begley, who's the Wall Street Journal science reporter, called, excuse me, Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain. And it dealt with, I couldn't find the book. Well, Marcia's not here to apologize to anyway, and neither is Kathy, but I couldn't find the book to bring to show it to you so that you could see if it's something that you have in the bookstore. But the concept of it is the Dalai Lama, for a period of 20 years, had neuroscientists coming to Dharamsala to talk to him about their research. And so her book chronicles all of those different neuroscientist studies and what they came about learning. And the reason that the Dalai Lama was doing that is partly motivated by his wanting to know, does neuroscience prove up or disprove the principles of Buddhism? And of course, it pretty much proved it up. That meditation, quieting the mind, that opening things up, that changing the neural pathways in our brain by changing those processes in our mind, by quieting the mind, that we can actually physiologically change the brain, which changes, of course, the body. So there you have this body-mind connection that Reverend Bonnie's going to be dealing with in her class the next time around. But I want to also talk to you a little bit today about a new book that I have come into connection with called The Whole New Brain by Dan Pink, that was written a few years back. His thesis is that new ideas are where the currency of the future lies. That in the past, and it's a concept of left brain, right brain, and this is where I want to go with it, is to get into this idea of right brain, left brain. But theoretically, what he's saying is that he's pointing out an indications of trends in our culture and in our society and in the global sense of it as well, where things have shifted and changed so much. We've had to rejoice in so much change. We've had to allow so much change in to our lives in the last few years that it's almost overwhelming sometimes. But that this whole left brain philosophy and focus of our society in the last era is going to be shifting and changing. And this idea of individualism and separateness, this idea of knowledge and information, and you got to be the expert, you got to be the smartest and best at what you do, you got to do, you got to produce, that all of that is going to be shifting from that left brain dominance that we have been operating out of pretty much since the industrial age began, and that it's shifting now into the right brain, where because of the technology of things like this iPhone and smartphones, and in the next 5 years that 2 billion more people will have one on the planet, there is going to be this just tectonic shift in our society in general, where the idea of having to know something and the fact that somebody knows it gives them a different value than the person who doesn't know it. Erase all that, because with this thing, anybody who can at least, has enough knowledge to type or spell, and even at that, it spells smarter than we do. I have to go back and read things to make sure they're right, because it's always correcting what I'm trying to write. And so that eventually what we're going to have is that the real value is going to be on the right brain, on the new ideas, on the creativity of things. In fact, this in and of itself, if you know the story of Steve Jobs of Apple, he said, I don't create for the market, for the demand that's in the market. I want to create something new. I want a new idea that people don't even know they want it until they see it and know what it can do for them. I'm not working to try to make a better XYZ thing. I'm shifting over here to something completely different, a whole new idea. This is right for you guys, on the right brain side of things, to allow something new to come in. So I would like to talk to you a little bit about this left brain, right brain thing, and then we'll talk about how that may change things in your world and how you look at things. And if I was hearing this morning that maybe some of the pens are not working in the backs of the seats in front of you, but maybe you can shift around and find one. If you're willing and desirous of taking notes, I want to give you some things from Dan Pink's book, as well as from other sources that I've drawn from, that has to do with what are the characteristics of right brain and left brain. I'm trying to do it on your side, and I'm having to cross over. So the left brain, where we've been living, most of us, for most of our lives, and where that pathway between the right and the left maybe is only like a 2-lane country road right now, and where I'm going to submit to you that my goal, and I would invite you to think about the same today, is whether or not you want to exercise more of your right brain to get that muscle built up so that the right and the left are more counterbalancing each other, rather than that your left brain is like, oh, so heavy and so powerful, and your right's been kind of ignored. So the left brain concept of how our society's been operating, the left brain is linear and logical. So if you just draw a line down the page or whatever, right and left. The right brain, on the other hand, is intuitive and simultaneous. Not sequential, like the left brain is sequential. First this, then that, then this, then that. Whereas the right brain has this greater simultaneity to it, that something can come. Ever had the aha? That's the right brain going, whoa. Because the left brain deals with like text, words. The right brain deals with context. So the left brain is the 1,000 words, and the right brain is the big picture. So the picture that's worth 1,000 words, those are on either side of the line there. So the right brain gets something all at once, usually as an image, or the big picture, rather than the 1,000 words. The left brain moves only at the speed of words. Your consciousness, which is your left brain, in Doug's reading it was higher and lower, but your conscious mind is in your left brain, and your subconscious, unconscious mind is on the right side. So the left brain is the one that is stalled up in how fast it can operate, because it has to deal with this concept of words. So the 2 to 4% that is your conscious mind, according to the scientists, can only move at the speed of a word. And they say that we can take in about 400 words a minute. But when somebody does the Gatling gun, that's how I learned to think in Spanish, by the way. There was a gal on the Mexican TV that did a little program called Muchas Noticias en Pocas Palabras. And that's what it was like. It was like a Gatling gun. And there was no time to translate. So you just had to accelerate your brain. And the left brain deals with analysis of detail, wants to get all the details, and wants to analyze the details. The right brain is busy synthesizing those things. So the synthesis of the right brain is what provides it to have that big picture of that single image. So the conscious mind is the left, and the unconscious or subconscious is the right. So the left brain is like the file cabinet that holds all your files. But it didn't create the files. It holds everything you've ever known, and all this past, and all this history, all the experiences, all the things that you tell yourself about how and why your life is the way it is. All that stuff is in the left brain, in the file cabinet. But it's the right brain that actually creates the new files, because that's the side from which the newness comes in, the new idea, the new concept, and the idea that something different is here. And then your left brain goes and tries to process it, or tries to analyze it, or figure it out. The left brain is your past, your history, as I said, and the right brain is new. It's what's open at the top. It's what's allowing newness to come in, or a different way of thinking. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that your left brain is fear-based. That's the part that's got that amygdala that says, whoa, I'm scared of this. Better run away, either fight it or leave it, you know? And your right brain is love. So it's either fear or love on those sides of the equation as well. Then your left brain feels separateness, feels apart from, feels individualized. And your right brain feels oneness, unity, connectedness. Your left brain is where your ego resides. And your right brain is where your soul is. Your left brain is resistant to newness. You know, wants to say, okay, wait a minute here, time out. I gotta analyze this before I let this in. And your right brain is like, what the heck? Let's just go for it. We're open. Let's go. So those are the differences, and it's not to say that one is better than the other, because we really need them both. And that's where I think some of our concerns have come up, is where we don't realize that this left brain dominance that we've been rewarded for in school, that we've been given jobs for in our adult lives, that we've tried to teach our kids, all of that education has pulled us away from that right brainedness. Jesus said to us to be as little children. Think about little children. Think, Kira, wherever she was. Yeah. Think about little children. How do they learn? I mean, first of all, they're like new to the planet. Zia is new to the planet, right? She doesn't know what she doesn't know. She can play with the piano, whatever. These are the things that are a part of the childlikeness that is really residing more in the right brain than in the left brain, until we educate them and socialize them out of it. And that's what happened to us too, right? So we want to get more back into the right brainness if we want to be rejoicing in newness. The right brain is what's now. It's what's in the present. Then that left brain comes in and says, well, like this, the last time this happened, or I'm just a little resistant, I don't know about this. And it's the left brain that's processing what's coming in through the right. And yet, when we have this two-lane highway that most of us is about all we have, unless you're an artist, a musician, someone who's really spent a great deal of the time of their lives working out of the right side of the brain, most of us are like, that doesn't make sense. That's not logical. That won't work. That's the left brain side saying, that right part is wrong. And yet, what we need is the integration. So the new neural pathways that we want to create that will provide us with a greater creative process, a higher level of creative process, because the right side is connected to spirit, as Doug was reading to us. That right side is where you hook up to the inner God that is the outer God, that is the only God, that is us as us, through us, around, and for us. That's where the message comes in. How many of you have ever had a situation where you had something come through intuitively, and you did it against all logic, you know, and it worked out wonderfully? Some of you are shaking your heads, and then there's others of us that are too left brain, and we didn't listen to our intuition, you know. It's the message came through, and we killed the messenger. So the intuitive part of us is where the newness comes in, where the new idea comes in, where somebody can come up with a conceptualization of this kind of thing. That's where it has to happen. That's why Apple has people like, you know, coloring and coloring books all day and doing all sorts of creative. This is, I guess, because I've just been up there, off the reservation kind of thinking, that brings them to a whole different perception and conceptualization of things that is completely outside of the box. And I think most of us have been in the life process long enough that we are able to see, we can look back and we can see the box we were in, but we couldn't see it when we were in it. And we don't see the one we're in right now. You know, it's very difficult to describe the dragon that swallowed you. You don't know, you're inside of it, and you don't know what the outside really looks like. And yet you're overwhelmed by it, and you feel stuck inside of it. So when you have these moments of upset and overwhelm, you know, you're inside the box. You're on the left-hand side of the brain. That's where the distress and the upset and all that comes. The right side is kind of Pollyanna, like, oh, so what? Who cares? But be ye like that little child, and allow that right brain to bring in those new ideas and be creative about it and rejoice in them. And with a higher level of creativity, I believe all of us have a better opportunity to create more of the life we want. We wouldn't be in this room if we weren't ready for more. If we didn't want something at a higher level than we have it today, there wouldn't be much reason to join up with this group here and be down here, right? So I'm just going to assume that that's the case, that we all want more, that I love myself the way I am and I'm ready for more. So if we want more in our lives and we want a higher level of joy, and I noticed that in your program, the core value of joy is that we're open to life as it comes to us, and we celebrate life. So that's what the rejoicing is, rejoicing. Joy again, 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 because every day brings again, 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 something new for us to decide, do I embrace this? Was this my thought? Was this my idea? Was I connected to spirit? Did this come through my meditation? Is this a part? And I'm thinking about offering a workshop that I want to put together, I think, on this, because I'm really intrigued by this whole concept and some of the things that I've been learning about how to use it in the workshop that I did in Mexico with this information about how to access your subconscious mind through the back door. Because if you're like me, you're busy pushing it away. You know, the left brain is not wanting to let it in. And I'm resistant and kind of fighting things a lot of times. So we'll talk about that with the group here if they want to do this workshop. But if that creative life that you want to live has inside of it more of whatever, you know, more connection to spirit, more love, more joy, more spirit-connected life, more money, more of whatever. That if you're here in the room, I'm just submitting to us that, you know, there's something that we are desiring. That the desires of our heart are still uncompleted on some level, and we're wanting something more, and we're here to learn how to get the tools to take us there. I want to submit to you that the Breedloves and what they just did are an example of the creative idea and the creative mind. My understanding of the story is that there's some financial desire for more here, and they are the wonderful example of not sitting around bemoaning the lack, but taking the creative process of what you have, what you know, and who you are, and rethinking it at a different level than the level that the problem was created, where you say, well, we just got to bring more in, or more people got to come, or, you know, whatever the thoughts have been. This is a new way of thinking where they take what they know, they take what they have to offer, which is their talent and time and treasure that's come from their years of experience in guiding tours, and partnered up with the center and Randy to say, hey, let's do this, and let's raise some money this way for the center's greater good. That's an example that fits right in with what Ernest Holmes teaches us, which is you do not have a lack of money. You have a lack of creativity. And you're busy with your fear of the lack, pushing back that creativity, because we just saw fears on which side of the brain? Left. And so that side of the brain, with you're in fear, you're not allowing in those new creative ideas to come in from the right side, it can't get past that fear. And the scientists will tell you, I mean, there's lots of research out there on the brain, that you don't make good decisions sitting in fear. And I think it's because you can't really access that creative brain. But if you're out there doing other things like art or music, or just looking at the beauty around you and taking it in and appreciating it, I heard someone say, was what they got from the trip. It was awesome to be in that canyon and look up at those 1,000-foot walls and to see the petroglyphs and the pictographs on the walls and the natives and the fact that people have been inhabiting that canyon for thousands and thousands of years. That's awesome. That's awe-producing. That's humbling. And yet, it's creative. It's creative to see how other people have lived, what they managed to do with, how they operated. These are creative ways that we let things in through our right brain, your right brain over here, to change and transform ourselves, transform who we are. So when that fear is in the way of lack and limitation, we're not allowing our right brain to function. So go out and do something different. You know, cut your hair like Skip did. Change your thinking, change your life, you know, change your hairdo, change your life, whatever it is. Do something different today. Wash something different first thing in the morning in the shower, whatever. Do something to change it up. You know, it's about pattern interruption is a part of it too. So the technique that I want to offer you today, which is based on the notes that I asked you to take, is next time, maybe it's even getting out of the parking lot today, next time you have a challenge, next time you feel like you're in overwhelm, next time there's a distressful, discomfortable feeling, and by the way, that's the way the brain works too. The feeling kind of comes from the right side. You think on the left, feel on the right. Ask yourself these questions to see how you can move more to the other side of whatever. And you want to have integration. As I said, it's not about the left is wrong and the right is good, or it's not about that. It's about the future, the way Dan Pink sees it, is the left brain will still be valuable, but it won't be sufficient to the day anymore, as it has been for many, 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 many decades. We need the right brain to work, and we need to have the creative ideas and solutions, because that's where the opportunity for up-leveling our lives exists. So when you're in that overwhelm or that distress or that discomfort, see if you can remember to ask yourself these questions. Which side of the brain am I coming from? Do I have a 2-lane highway going on there, or am I building a super highway with multiple lanes so that the neural pathways and the neuroplasticity can create a different outcome for me? So ask yourself, is it fear-based? Is it ego-centered? Is it from the past, pain of the past, or is it fear of the future that I'm sitting in? Am I telling myself it's not logical and it can't work? Am I operating on something that's based on past experience? Am I complaining? Am I judging? Am I saying, I can't? What side of the brain would that all be on? Yeah. On the other hand, if you're feeling, oh gosh, you know, I just need to go for it. I need to try. I need to make this happen. Or is it heart connected? Do you feel love around it? Or maybe you're saying to yourself, hey, well, what's the worst that could happen? Or if you feel like you've got an intuitive hit, you know what Louise Hay calls her inner ding, if you've ever studied Louise Hay. Those are the kinds of things that come from the right. And if you're in that moment of distress and overwhelm, see how you can integrate those. Because what we want is we want the whole brain. You know how the Buddhists and the Hindus talk about mindfulness? Think about that as M-I-N-D-F-U-L-L. The mind is full. You're using the full mind, both sides of your brain. It's integrated so that you can have a life that causes you to take better actions, that's more highly motivated, that you're acting out of love and intuition, but it's still logical. You create your own reality. You're using your whole brain. It's still ego-centered. You know, we need the ego to find the car keys, and remember we had to put gas in it. You know, we still need all of that left brain stuff. We just don't want it to be so heavy that we're controlled by just that one side. So today is like a blank canvas for you. And don't be afraid to make your mark on it. Don't be afraid to touch it with your pen or your pencil. Don't be afraid of the new ideas. Don't resist. Just allow the how. Allow the how. And in closing, if I can get this little gizmo to work, I want to read you something from the idea of the new moon, which I happened to look up because it was a new moon, and I thought this is so appropriate. The astrologers are saying that the new moon is in Leo, the lion. And one of them that I read had this to say, that the best part of Leo is the inner child. You are to nourish and protect your childlike innocence and be engaged in the magic of the moment. Be in your heart. Let go of the need to criticize and judge. Negativity will kill your creativity. And instead, allow yourself to make mistakes. It's the only way to learn. In other words, the only way to change, the only way to get something new in that works and what does not work, to learn what works and what does not work for you. The magic word is do. Do something different. Try and watch your mind and your heart open up and your brain. Namaste.